Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into AI, specifically how it's learning to understand us, even write like us.
Pretty fascinating stuff.
It is. You sent us this research paper, Improving Language Understanding by Generative Pre-training. It's all about this model, GPT. Have you heard of it?
Oh, yeah, GPT. It's kind of a big deal. It's a short for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, by the way.
Okay, GPT Transformers. Sounds like a Michael Bay movie.
Yeah, well, Hollywood loves to borrow from real science, right?
True, true. So what is it at its core? What's the big idea?
Well, it tries to solve this huge problem in AI. How to teach a machine to understand language.
And not just words, right? But like the meaning behind them.
Exactly. And the old way of doing it was like, well, imagine trying to teach someone to read by just handing them a dictionary.
Yikes. That's a recipe for disaster.
Total information overload. And that's kind of what we were doing with AI until GPT.
So GPT is different. How so?
It's a two-stage solution.
Two stages.
The first is all about letting the AI explore tons of text, but without any specific task.
Yeah.
Just absorbing it all.
So it's more about letting it develop a feel for language kind of naturally.
Yeah, like how we learned as kids. GPT's playground was this data set called Books Corpus. Over 7,000 books. Imagine that.
Wow, that's a lot of reading.
Right. And during this stage, it's basically playing a giant game of fill in the blanks.
Huh.
Predict the next word.
So it's learning the flow of language, how sentences work, how words connect.
You got it. And a big part of this is GPT's architecture. It uses something called a transformer.
Okay, here comes the tech jargon.
Don't worry, it's not that scary. Imagine transformers as a way for the AI to look at a whole sentence at once, like solving a puzzle by seeing all the pieces.
So understanding context, right? How words relate across the whole sentence, not just one by one.
Exactly. And once it's got that base knowledge from all that reading, we move to stage 2, supervised fine-tuning.
Okay, so this is where we actually give it specific skills.
Right. We adapted to do things like answering questions, figuring out if a text is happy or sad, or whether two sentences basically mean the same thing.
So it's like taking someone who's a great reader and then training them to be a lawyer or a poet, each using language differently.
Perfect analogy. And thanks to all that pre-training, we only need small tweaks for each new task. Pretty efficient.
Sounds like it. But the big question, did it actually work? Did GPT live up to all the hype?
Oh, yeah, it did. In fact, the results were kind of mind-blowing. This two-stage approach got state-of-the-art results on 9 out of 12 different language tasks.
9 out of 12. That's seriously impressive. What kinds of tasks are we talking about? Give us the specifics.
Well, one was something called natural language inference, like trying to figure out if two sentences contradict each other or support each other or are just totally unrelated. It's tricky, even for us humans.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. Sometimes I can't even follow a long email chain. So how did GPT do?
It crushed it. Aced these data sets called multi-NLI and SciTale. They have really complex sentences from Wikipedia, even scientific exams.
So it's not just understanding words, it's actually reasoning about how sentences connect to each other. That's pretty huge.
Exactly. And it wasn't just natural language inference. Another one it aced was question answering.
Okay, like those question answering systems online, where you type something in and it pulls an answer from a database.
Kind of, but way more advanced. GPT was tested on this dataset called RAISE-E, actual questions from middle and high school exams.
Wow, so these are questions that require you to actually understand the text, not just find keywords.
Exactly. You often need to read a whole paragraph, make inferences, draw conclusions. And GPT did remarkably well.
So it's not just basic fact retrieval, it's actually understanding and reasoning about what it reads. That's impressive.
Right. And then there's semantic similarity, basically figuring out if two sentences mean the same thing, even if they use different words, like paraphrasing.
So it can tell that the cat sat on the mat and the feline lounged upon the rug are basically saying the same thing.
Exactly. It got amazing results on these data sets like STSB. It really shows how sensitive it is to those subtle shades of meaning in language.
Wow, this is incredible. I'm starting to see the potential here. Did it do well in anything else?
Oh, yeah. Text classification was another one.
Yeah.
Things like figuring out the overall sentiment of a piece of writing, positive, negative, neutral.
So it can tell if a review is glowing or scathing.
Exactly. It aced the Stanford Sentiment Tree Bank data set, showed it can really grasp the emotional tone of a text.
This is fascinating. It's like GPT can read between the lines. But did it struggle with anything? Was there anything it just couldn't do?
Well, this is where it gets even more interesting. Researchers found that GPT could actually do well on some tasks without any specific fine-tuning.
Wait, what? You mean it could just figure things out on its own? That's
Yeah.
great.
Right. They call it zero-shot learning. It suggests that GPT learns so much from all that reading that it can apply its knowledge to new challenges without specific instructions.
That's mind-blowing. So it's like GPT is learning how to learn. What kinds of things could it do with zero-shot learning?
One example was something called linguistic acceptability. They tested its ability to judge if a sentence is grammatically correct, something it hadn't been directly trained to do.
So it's like it learned the rules of grammar just by being exposed to so much text, like how we pick up languages as kids.
Exactly. And they also tested it on sentiment analysis again, but this time without specific training on positive and negative words. They just tweaked the sentences a little and
And
they can still accurately predict the sentiment.
it's like GPT has an innate sense of how humans express emotion, even without being explicitly taught. That's remarkable.
Right. And they even tested it on answering questions again, using the RACE dataset. They just gave it the document and the question, no hints. It did surprisingly well. Its general knowledge was enough to understand the context and pick plausible answers.
This is incredible. It sounds like GPT is capable of so much more than just answering simple questions or translating languages. It's like it's developing a kind of general intelligence.
It's a really interesting thought, isn't it?
Hmm.
And that's what makes this research so groundbreaking. It's not just about solving specific problems. It's about a whole new way of thinking about AI.
This is all so fascinating. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, I want to make sure we don't get ahead of ourselves. We've heard about some amazing achievements, but I'm curious about the specifics. What were the actual improvements? How much better was GPT compared to what existed before?
You're right, the details are important. Let's go back to natural language inference, where GPT saw some of its biggest gains. Remember multi-NLI and Scitale, those data sets with the complex sentences?
Yeah, the ones from Wikipedia and the scientific exams.
Exactly. Well, GPT beat the previous best models by 1.5% on multi-NLI and a whopping 5% on Scitale.
Wow, that's not just a small improvement, that's a whole new level of accuracy. What about those challenging questions from the RACE dataset? Did GPT make big gains there too?
Absolutely. Its performance on question answering was equally impressive. He got an overall improvement of 5.7% on RACE, way better than previous models. So it can answer those tough questions that need reasoning and drawing conclusions more accurately than ever before.
Okay, so we've established that GPT is a whiz at understanding how sentences connect and answering difficult questions. But what about its ability to grasp the nuances of meaning? How did it do on semantic similarity?
GPT once again showed it was top-notch on the STSB dataset. It got a remarkable 1-point absolute gain compared to previous state-of-the-art models. So yeah, it can really tell when two sentences are basically saying the same thing, even if they use different words.
So it's not just a logic machine, it also has a fine-tuned understanding of meaning. But what about those zero-shot learning capabilities? You mentioned it could do some tasks without any specific training. Can you elaborate on that? It sounds almost too good to be true.
I know, right? It's pretty remarkable. They did these tests where they had GPT score sentences for grammatical correctness
Yeah.
without any training on grammar rules.
And
And it worked.
yep, it was like it had learned grammar by osmosis just from all that reading.
That's amazing. It makes you wonder what other hidden talents it might have. What other zero-shot tasks did it excel at?
They also tested it on sentiment analysis, but this time without training it on positive and negative words. They just added the word very to each sentence and limited GPT's output to the words positive and negative,
So they tricked it.
in a way. But it still worked. GPT could still accurately predict the sentiment, just based on which of those two words it thought was more likely.
It's like it has this built-in understanding of how human emotion is expressed in language. This is really blowing my mind. What about answering questions without training? Could it do that too?
They tested that as well using the RACE dataset. They just gave GPT the document and the question, no specific instructions.
And how did it do? Surprisingly well. It turns out its pre-trained knowledge was enough for it to understand the context and choose plausible answers.
This is incredible. It sounds like GPT is capable of so much more than just answering simple questions or translating languages. It's like it's developing a kind of common sense reasoning, like a real understanding of how the world works.
You've hit on a really key point, and that's what makes this research so groundbreaking. It's not just about solving specific tasks, it's about opening up a whole new way of thinking about AI and its potential to understand and interact with the world.
It's both exciting and a little bit daunting, isn't it? This research has such far-reaching implications, and we're only just beginning to explore the possibilities. But one thing is clear. GPT and its successors have the potential to revolutionize how we interact with language and information.
Absolutely. It's a thrilling time to be working in this field.
I can only imagine. But before we get too carried away, it's important to acknowledge that no invention is perfect. We've talked about GPT's successes, but every great invention has its limitations. What are some areas where GPT falls short? What are the challenges researchers are still working on?
You're right. It's important to be realistic about the current state of AI. One limitation of GPT and similar models is their reliance on those massive data sets for training. These data sets, while huge, are still finite and might not capture the full complexity and diversity of human language.
So it's like saying GPT has read a lot of books but hasn't experienced life in all its messy glory. There are still gaps in its knowledge and understanding.
Exactly. And then there's the question of explainability. GPT and other deep learning models are often called black boxes because their inner workings are hard to understand. This lack of transparency makes it hard to know why a model makes certain decisions or to spot potential errors in its reasoning.
So it's like GPT can sometimes give the right answer, but can't always explain how it got there. That can be a problem, especially in areas where trust and accountability are essential.
You're absolutely right. These are just some of the challenges researchers are actively working on.
Mm.
Addressing these limitations will be crucial for ensuring that AI models like GPT are used responsibly and ethically.
It's a good reminder that while we celebrate these advancements, we also need to proceed with caution and critical thinking. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the broader impact of this research. GPT has shown us that AI can understand language at an unprecedented level, but what does that mean for us humans? How will this technology shape our lives in the years to come?
That's the big question, isn't it? The potential applications of GPT and similar models are vast, spanning numerous domains. In education, we can imagine AI tutors providing personalized learning experiences tailored to each student's needs. In healthcare, AI assistants could analyze medical records and research papers to help doctors with diagnoses and treatment plans.
It's like having a team of expert consultants at your fingertips, available 204/7. What about the creative industries? Could AI models like GPT become novelists, poets, or screenwriters?
It's definitely a possibility. We're already seeing AI models generating impressive creative text formats like poems, scripts, and even musical compositions. While these models might not replace human creativity, they can definitely augment it, giving artists and writers new tools and inspiration.
Imagine collaborating with an AI to write the next blockbuster novel or chart-topping hit. The possibilities are endless. But let's not forget about the potential downsides. What about the impact on jobs? Could AI models like GPT lead to widespread unemployment as machines become capable of performing tasks previously done by humans?
That's a valid concern, and it's something we need to consider carefully. It's likely that AI will automate certain jobs, particularly those involving repetitive tasks or data processing. However, it's also likely that AI will create new jobs and opportunities in areas like AI development, data science, and AI ethics.
So it's not necessarily a zero-sum game. AI will undoubtedly disrupt the job market, but it will also create new avenues for human ingenuity and expertise. The key is to adapt and evolve alongside this rapidly advancing technology.
I completely agree. We need to focus on developing skills that complement AI rather than trying to compete with it. This includes things like critical thinking, creativity, emotional intelligence, and complex problem solving. These are the skills that will set humans apart from machines and allow us to thrive in an AI-powered world.
It's a call to action for all of us to embrace lifelong learning and to cultivate the uniquely human qualities that will enable us to navigate the challenges and opportunities of the AI era. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to circle back to something we discussed earlier: explainability. You mentioned that GPT and other deep learning models are often opaque, making it difficult to understand their decision-making process. Why is this a problem, and what are researchers doing to address it?
It's a problem for a few reasons. First, lack of explainability can hinder trust. If we don't understand how an AI model makes decisions, we may be hesitant to rely on its output, especially in high-stakes situations like medical diagnosis or financial forecasting.
So it's like saying, I trust you, AI, but show me why I should trust you.
Exactly. Second, a lack of explainability makes it really tough to debug and improve these AI models. If we don't know why a model is making errors, it's hard to fix them and improve its performance.
It's like trying to fix a car engine without knowing how the engine works. You might be able to make some superficial repairs, but you'll never truly understand what's going on under the hood.
That's a great analogy. And finally, a lack of explainability can raise ethical concerns. If we don't understand how an AI is making decisions, we can't be sure those decisions are fair, unbiased, and align with our values.
So it's not just about technical performance. It's about ensuring that AI is used in a way that benefits humanity and upholds our ethical principles. What are researchers doing to make these AI models more transparent and accountable?
Researchers are working on several approaches. One is developing new algorithms that are inherently more transparent and interpretable, allowing us to peek inside that black box and see how the model arrives at its conclusions.
So it's like designing AI models with glass walls so we can see the gears turning.
Another approach is developing tools and techniques to visualize and interpret the output of these models. These tools can help us identify patterns in the model's behavior and understand how it makes decisions.
It's like giving us a map of the AI's thought process.
Exactly. And finally, researchers are working on methods for auditing AI models to make sure they're fair, unbiased, and aligned with our values. These audits can help identify potential biases in the model's training data or decision-making processes and provide recommendations for mitigating those biases.
So it's like having an independent inspector general for AI, making sure it's operating ethically and responsibly.
Precisely. These efforts are really important for building trust in AI and ensuring that it's used to benefit everyone.
It's a good reminder that while AI has the potential to solve some of the world's most pressing problems, we must proceed thoughtfully and critically. But before we delve further into those ethical implications, it's time for a little shift in focus. We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive into GPT, and we still have so much more to explore.
We do, and I'm looking forward to diving in deeper.
When we return, we'll take a closer look at the inner workings of GPT's transformer architecture and explore some real-world applications of this groundbreaking technology. So stay with us.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been exploring GPT, this revolutionary AI model.
Yeah, it's been pretty mind-blowing so far. All the things it can do, it's amazing. But I'm still curious about, what makes it tick, what's under the hood.
Well, a big part of GPT's secret sauce is its architecture, specifically something called transformers.
Okay, transformers. Is that like the robots in disguise?
Not quite.
Yeah.
But they are pretty powerful. See, traditional language models, they struggled with long sentences because they processed information one word at a time.
Like trying to understand a movie by watching one frame at a time.
Yeah, you'd miss the whole plot. But transformers change that. They can look at a whole sentence at once, all the words, all the connections.
So it gets the big picture, not just the individual pieces.
Exactly. And a key to this is something called self-attention.
Self-attention. Does that mean that AI is like meditating on the meaning of life?
Not quite that deep, but it's kind of similar. It allows every word in the sentence to consider its relationship with every other word.
So it's like each word is checking in with all the other words, seeing how they fit together.
Exactly. And through that process, the model builds a really deep understanding of the sentence, not just the individual words, but the whole meaning.
So it's not just about definitions, it's about understanding the context, the nuances, the unspoken connections that make language so complex.
You got it. And this is what allows transformers like GPT to be so good at things like question answering, summarizing text, even writing creatively.
It's like GPT went to grad school for linguistics. It's not just processing words, it's truly understanding them.
Right, and that's what's so exciting about GPT and these other transformer-based models.
Yeah.
They're not just solving isolated tasks, they're changing the way we interact with information, even the way we communicate.
It's almost like the lines are blurring between, human communication and machine communication.
And that raises some pretty fascinating questions about the future of language. What is intelligence? What does it mean to be human?
Deep stuff. But before we go full philosophy, let's bring things back down to earth a bit. We've talked about what GPT can do, but how's it actually being used in the real world today?
GPT and models like it are already being used in tons of different industries, from customer service to healthcare, even education.
Okay, give me some examples. How is this tech making a real difference?
One area you're probably already seeing it in action is chatbots. Those AI helpers you find on websites or in apps.
Yeah, those things. Some of them are getting pretty good these days, I have to admit.
Right. And that's because of GPT. Those old chatbots were so limited they could only answer specific questions, and their responses always sounded so robotic.
Like talking to a computer program, not a real person.
Exactly. But GPT is changing that. Because it understands natural language so well, we can now create chatbots that are smarter, more engaging, and sound way less robotic.
So it's like they finally got a brain upgrade. They're not just following a script anymore.
That's a great way to put it. And this means businesses can create a much more personalized and efficient experience for their customers.
Okay, but I need a real-world example. How is GPT actually being used in chatbots?
Let's say you're shopping online. You have a question about a product. In the past, you'd have to dig through menus or wait on hold forever. But now, you can just type your question in a chat window, and there's a good chance you're talking to a GPT-powered chatbot.
I've definitely done that. But sometimes those chatbots still can't figure out what I'm asking.
That's because they might not be using GPT. A GPT-powered chatbot can understand you, even if your question is phrased in a complicated way. And it can access a huge database of product info to give you a really good answer.
So it's like having a super knowledgeable sales assistant at your fingertips.
Exactly. And it can even give you personalized recommendations based on your browsing history, what you've bought before, even your mood.
Whoa, that's getting a little creepy. Like it's reading my mind.
Well, maybe not your mind, but it is getting really good at understanding what people want. And if the chatbot can't answer your question, it can connect you to a human agent. So you're never left hanging.
So it's the best of both worlds. The efficiency of AI, but with a human touch when you need it.
Right. It's about finding that balance. And this is just one example of how GPT is changing customer service. There are so many possibilities.
I'm starting to see that. It sounds like it's a win-win. Customers get better service, and businesses can save time and money. What other areas is GPT making a big impact in?
Another exciting one is content creation. GPT is being used to generate all sorts of things, from marketing copy to news articles, even creative writing like poems and novels.
Wait, hold on. AI is writing poems now. That's both amazing and a little scary, to be honest.
It's definitely a disruptive technology. But remember, these AI models are tools. They're meant to help us be more creative, not replace human creativity altogether.
So it's more like having a writing partner who can help you brainstorm, generate different drafts, maybe even polish your final piece.
Exactly. And it's especially helpful for tasks that involve lots of repetitive writing, like product descriptions or summarizing long reports.
So GPT is not just a language whiz, it's also a massive time saver. It can handle the boring stuff, so we humans can focus on the more creative and interesting parts of our work.
That's the idea. And there's so many other applications out there. One that I'm really excited about is personalized education.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Imagine a world where every student has an AI tutor that can adapt to their learning style, give them custom feedback, even create personalized learning materials just for them.
Wow, that would be incredible, like having a one-on-one tutor for every student.
That's the goal. And GPT is making this possible. Because it can understand and generate language so well, it can actually create those interactive learning experiences tailored to each student's strengths and weaknesses.
It's not just about delivering information, it's about creating a unique learning journey for every student. That's pretty amazing. What about other applications, something totally different?
Well, healthcare is another area where GPT is showing a lot of promise. Think about it. Healthcare is all about information. Medical records, research papers, even conversations between doctors and patients. GPT can analyze all that data and help doctors make better diagnoses, personalized treatment plans, even improve the way they communicate with patients.
It's like having a medical expert on call 24/7.
Right. And that can have a huge impact on patients' lives.
It's amazing to see how this one technology, GPT, is transforming so many different fields. But I'm also curious about the impact on the professionals in those fields. How are doctors, teachers, writers reacting to all this?
Well, there's always some hesitation with new tech, right? The fear of the unknown. But I think most people recognize that GPT is a powerful tool that can help us do our jobs better.
So it's not about humans versus machines. It's about humans and machines working together.
Exactly. GPT can handle the data analysis, the research, the more routine tasks. This frees up professionals to focus on what they do best: building relationships, solving complex problems, being creative, the things that AI can't do.
It's about finding the right balance. Let AI do what it's good at, and let humans focus on what makes us human.
That's the key. And as GPT continues to evolve, I think we'll see even more creative and innovative ways to use it to make our lives better.
I can't wait to see what the future holds. But before we get too carried away with all the amazing possibilities, let's talk about the potential downsides. What are the challenges and risks associated with this technology? What do we need to be careful about as we move forward?
You're right. It's important to be cautious and think critically about any new technology, especially one as powerful as AI. One of the biggest challenges is making sure AI is used ethically and responsibly. We need to be aware of things like bias, the potential for job losses, and the need for transparency and accountability.
Those are some pretty big issues. How do we even begin to address them?
It starts with recognizing that AI is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. It all depends on the choices we make, how we develop and use it.
So it's not just about the tech itself, it's about the human values that guide it.
Exactly. We need to be proactive in shaping the future of AI, not just reacting to it.
I hear you. But this all feels so huge. Where do we even begin?
One important step is to have open and honest conversations, like the one we're having right now. We need to engage everyone, policymakers, researchers, businesses, everyday people, to make sure AI is developed and used in a way that benefits everyone.
That's a good point. We need a collective effort to steer AI in the right direction. But beyond just talking about it, are there other, more concrete steps we can take?
Of course. When it comes to bias, for instance, one key step is to be really careful about the data that's used to train these AI models. We need to make sure it's diverse, representative, and free from harmful stereotypes. And we need ways to detect and fix bias in AI systems, even if it's not obvious at first.
So it's not just about collecting data, it's about being really thoughtful about what data we use.
Right. We need to be aware of the potential consequences of biased AI and work to prevent those from happening.
This makes a lot of sense. What about job displacement? A lot of people are understandably worried about losing their jobs as AI gets more sophisticated.
I understand that concern. And it's something we have to take seriously. But one thing to remember is that GPT and other AI are tools. It's not about replacing humans entirely. It's about augmenting what we can do.
So rather than seeing AI as a threat, we should think about how we can work with it.
Exactly. We need to adapt our education systems, our training programs, to prepare people for the jobs of the future. Jobs that will likely involve working side by side with AI.
It all comes back to lifelong learning, doesn't it? We all need to be constantly learning and adapting to keep up with these rapid changes.
Absolutely. And when it comes to transparency and accountability, we need to push for greater openness in how AI is developed.
Yeah.
We need to understand how it works, how it makes decisions, what data it's using.
So instead of just accepting AI's answers blindly, we need to be able to look under the hood and understand its reasoning.
Right. We need to be able to ask questions, challenge assumptions, and hold AI systems accountable for their actions.
This is so important. It's not just about the technical stuff, it's about making sure AI is used ethically and responsibly.
Couldn't agree more. It requires a shift in our thinking. We need to move beyond all the hype and see AI for what it is. A powerful tool that can be used for good or for bad.
It's like we're at a crossroads. We have this incredible technology at our fingertips, but it's up to us to decide how we use it.
That's a great way to put it. We have the power to shape the future of AI, but it requires us to be thoughtful, intentional, and proactive.
Well said. But before we get too lost in these big picture questions, let's bring it back to GPT for a moment. We've explored its potential impact on so many fields, but I'm curious to hear more about its application in one specific area. What are your thoughts?
Why don't we dive into the world of customer service? It's a field where GPT is already revolutionizing how businesses interact with their customers.
I'm all for that. Let's see how GPT is changing the customer experience. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on quite a journey with GPT, haven't we?
Yeah, it's been pretty wild exploring all the things it can do.
But there's one thing we haven't really talked about, the fuel that powers all this learning.
Oh, you mean the data, right? The
Right.
data sets GPT is trained on. They're massive.
Massive is an understatement. We're talking about a colossal collection of text and code, like from everywhere. Books, articles, websites, even code repositories. It's mind-boggling.
It really is. Think of it as, I don't know, a digital library of all human knowledge, covering pretty much every topic you can imagine.
So it's like feeding GPT a buffet of information, a feast of human knowledge.
That's a good way to put it. And it's not just random stuff either. It's carefully curated to include a wide range of writing styles, perspectives, you name it.
So that GPT can, learn to recognize patterns, make connections, even mimic how we humans write.
Exactly. It's like a master chef learning by tasting every ingredient in the world.
I like that analogy. So the more variety in the data, the more versatile GPT becomes.
You got it. And that's one reason it's been so successful. It can handle all sorts of tasks, different contexts, because it's been exposed to so much.
It's like a Swiss Army knife for language. But these data sets, they're not just about technical capabilities, are they?
No, they're not. The data has a huge impact on GPT's limitations as well.
Ah, that's what I was thinking. Like the potential for bias, for example. We've touched on that before, but I think it's worth digging into a bit deeper.
For sure. It's a crucial issue. Remember, GPT learns from the data we feed it. So if the data is biased, well, GPT's outputs are going to be biased too.
It's like that old saying, garbage in, garbage out, right?
Exactly. Imagine a data set with mostly articles about male entrepreneurs. GPT might learn to associate entrepreneurship with men more strongly, even if we don't explicitly tell it to.
So it's picking up on those subtle patterns and biases in the data, even if they're not intentional. And those biases can have real consequences.
They absolutely can. Think about using GPT to screen job applicants. If the training data is biased, it might unfairly favor certain candidates.
That's a scary thought. It could perpetuate existing inequalities. It really highlights the need to be careful about what data we use.
We have to be extremely careful. And it's not just about those obvious biases either. Datasets can reflect those deeper societal biases, the ones we might not even be aware of. Even if we try to remove the obvious stuff, GPT might still pick up on those subtler biases.
That's a sobering thought. So it's not just about what we tell GPT, it's about the data itself. It seems like having diverse teams working on AI is more important than ever. People from different backgrounds who can spot those hidden biases.
Absolutely. We need diverse voices in AI, not just to address bias, but also to make sure these technologies are used in a way that benefits everyone, not just a select few.
This really drives home the point that developing and using AI is a huge responsibility. It's not just about the technology, it's about ethics and social impact as well.
You're absolutely right. We need to think about the values we're building into these systems. It's not just about what AI can do, but what it should do, what's the right thing to do.
It's like we're shaping the future, not just with the code we write, but with the data we feed these AI models.
We have a responsibility to choose that data carefully, to think about the impact it will have.
It's both exciting and a bit scary, knowing that we have this much influence. But I'm optimistic. If we approach AI development with a strong sense of responsibility and a focus on ethics, I think we can use this technology to make the world a better place.
I agree. And conversations like this are really important. We need to keep asking the tough questions, challenging assumptions, and working together to ensure that AI benefits all of humanity.
Well said. This has been an amazing journey into the world of GPT, hasn't it?
It really has. We've seen its incredible potential, the challenges, the ethical questions. It's a lot to think about.
It is, but that's the point of the deep dive, right? To explore these complex topics, to get people thinking. So to our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of GPT. We hope this conversation has given you a better understanding of this incredible technology, its potential, its limitations, and the role we all play in shaping its future.
It's a future that's full of possibilities, and it's up to all of us to make sure those possibilities are used for good.
This is The Deep Dive. Signing off.